Welcome back. In this video, we're going to be looking at some of the most commonly used data types within Q. So first of all, how do we determine what data type something is? We've actually already seen a spoiler for this in the previous video. So we know that's the keyword type. So you can see here, I've got a link here to that keyword. Just a note in general, we've tried to add links anytime we're using keywords. But if we haven't, you can always check them out on your reference card. So they're all covered here. Everything within the language is covered here. So you can see if I went to T, I would see type. And then I could go and learn more about the syntax and see some additional examples, which is nice. So we know when we run type, we get -7h returned for the 60 value. So I think we've seen that before. That we know now we have a long. So let's go back to our data types. We'll see we've got 7 and long. So what's the minus in front telling me? So the minus is basically indicating whether you have an atom or a list. So basically whether you have a singular value or multiple values. So if I add in another value and another one, you see my minus disappears. So, and even when I only have 2, it's the same. So when you have more than one, it means you have a list, and then that will be indicated by the lack of a minus sign here. And then finally the H. The H indicates that this here 7 number that's returned, so any basically referring to this n column, it's saying all of these are type short. So it actually has no bearing on this input 60. It's not telling you anything about the data you're investigating. So we can actually just ignore it. And there's a little bit more information in here on that. So feel free to read. But from going forward, we're just going to ignore it. And we're just going to take the first 2 characters to help us determine some information about our data types. So we've got some exercises to do that. And we're saying, yeah, as we said before, we can tell whether it's an atom or a vector by using telling which sign it is. And then the data type is our second character, which is our numeric value. So have a go with these exercises. We're asking for 3 things. So character reference value. You'll have to do a lookup on our reference card. So for example, I know I had 7 here. So the character reference value is this C column. So then that would be J for this example. And then my output is just whether it's negative or positive. So we've got a few different kinds of input here. So we've got a few different examples. So have a go with those. When you're feeling comfortable, let's move on and take a look at temporal data types. So we did already mention we've got a lot more time-specific data types than many other traditional programming languages. And they can be seen on our data type chart in between the numerics 12 and 19. So we've got things like timestamp, which is a combination of date and a time span, month, date, and then we go down to minutes and seconds. So if we run type on a few variants of that, we can see we get 19, 18, and 17 here. So we know that's our time, second, and minute, and you can even see that by the format, by the number of numerics, and then the separation between the colon. You can tell also that they're of a time data type. So Q is clever. It can apply these to each other. So for example, I could add minutes to time. And this is doing it with 2 different levels of granularity. So whether I have my decimal points here or not, depending on the highest level of granularity, that's what your result will show. Similarly with dates, we have the format year, month, and date. So I'm just showing here, I put a date by explicitly typing that format, and it would know that we mean a date. Also by using our system commands. So if we go back to here and into our .z namespace, we've got our system variables. So we've got .z.d, date shortcut, and that returns me my system date. So today is the 18th of June when I'm recording this video, and that's what that returns. And I can add the number 6, for example, to that, and that's just going to move my day on by 6 days. So Q is clever. It knows you're trying to add days to your date type. Then finally in the temporal data types, just to mention this time span type. So you can see here, we did actually point it out. So we've got time span, which looks like this, which this level of granularity. And then we've got a timestamp, which is a date, which is this format. Then we've got this capital letter D, and then we've got the time span. So that looks like this when we're trying to add, we're doing the same calculation basically as above here, except we're passing in the format of the time span type. So if we run this, we see we get our date separated by D, and the day has moved on by 6, and then we've got this, we've got no values here because we didn't have anything up at the top. So yeah, our timestamp is a combination of time and date, and quite often this is what's used for streaming data in your time column, because it's got the lowest level of granularity. So have a go with this exercise. It's asking you to create a timestamp adding the current date and time. Then when you're happy with that, we'll move on and take a look at textual data types. So in Q, there are 2 ways to store textual data types. The first way is a symbol. So that's indicated by this backtick character. And the second way is a string, which is indicated with double quotes. So we actually already seen this in the previous example, or the previous video as well. And if we run these, we can see what's returned. And if we run type on these, we can see one of them has a negative value out in front and the other one doesn't. So the symbol is actually an atom, and the string is a list. So if we, for example, took away everything except one of the characters and we ran type in that, you'd see we get a minus out in front here, and then we put H in, and we'll get a list returned. We can tell that by the sign. So 11 and 10 are, as always, over on our reference card, so we can tell symbol, backtick, that's what it looks like, character here, inverted quotes. And that's how you can tell the difference between which ones you have. And again, we have a short wee exercise just at the end of that, just testing both of those examples. Cool. Finally, in this data type section, let's look at null and infinite values. So you might have noticed them already when I'm flipping over to this data types page. We've got this column called null and then this column called infinity. So in Q, depending on the different data type you have, you'll get a different null or infinity value returned. So for example, a type on this here would return, you can see that's minus 7h, which is long, we've seen that above. And if we did type of 0n, 0nf, excuse me, we can see that's a float, and that's proven over here as well. We see 0nf, and floats actually have 2 different ones. So there's a null, you can indicate the null just by 0n, 0nf like you see here, but also there's another format which is 0 and lowercase n for floats, just to be aware of that. So we also have infinite values, which is this 0 and small w, and this is saying I have an infinite float. So infinites in Q represent values that lie outside the normal domain, and you've got a distinction between whether it's a lowercase or an uppercase, and you can see them here on your reference card. So the float has a lowercase and then the others all have a uppercase W. So one example of where you might see an infinite coming into your data set is when you try and divide by 0. Your result returned will give you a table of infinities. So and Q does that, so instead of throwing an error, it will just fill in, it'll execute the question and fill in your results with infinites, which is good because you it's not going to break your code, but you do want to be on the watch out for those. It's always better to replace those with nulls once you spot them, or with zeros. We have a little exercise. So we have another keyword introduced here. So this is the null keyword. So null returns a boolean, which is true or false. So we can see we have boolean type over here. And if I run null on a list, what it does is returns trues anywhere where that thing is true. So null is this null? Yes. Is this null? No, no, yes, no. And that's what you get back. You can see the B at the end indicates this is the list of booleans. Which is a handy wee keyword to be aware of when you're working with nulls. So have a go with this final exercise, just getting you to identify between an infinite and a null data type. There's loads more information on code.kx.com. As well, we have the Q for Mortals book. So if I look up Q for Mortals, KDB, and I'm just going to type in data type. There's a really nice chapter all on data types, going into all of these and loads more detail, and into the other ones that I haven't touched on today, and a lot of information on the relevancy to SQL and other programming languages as well. So definitely go and check those out and do some further reading, and I'll see you in the next video where we look at primitives.